All right, Bethany, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Watch Us Thrive.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I've really been looking forward to recording this specific episode. A lot of my listeners know, and for those who don't, I had weight loss surgery, and that has changed my life in such a way that I didn't know. But there's also a lot of emotional things that have come up that I did not realize. I feel like in the weight loss world, when it comes to having surgery, the surgeons don't really prepare you for how much mental work it takes to be on this journey. And I'm sure you can relate to that. We'll definitely get into that a little bit later. But first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, for having this conversation with me. It means a lot to me that I'm able to connect with someone who understands the struggle.
It is
so
a
I,
struggle.
it is.
Yeah.
It is a struggle, but at the same time, it's probably one of the most life-changing things I've ever done in the
Yes.
best way possible. So for anyone who's meeting you for the first time, I would love for you to introduce yourself and let them know who is Bethany Shields.
Well, I am Bethany Shields. I am a certified nutrition coach and I specialize in behavior change psychology and nutrition for athletes. As Leanne said, I am a former bariatric patient as well. I underwent vertical sleeve gastrectomy in 2016, and I have had a very long, interesting journey as far as my own struggles with weight and dieting and all of that, which eventually led me to becoming a nutrition coach. So that's like the sort of quick and dirty. I only recently transitioned into becoming a nutrition coach a couple years ago. So prior to that, my background was in classical music and an educator. So I was teaching in school for a while. Then I worked as an admin in a school before I switched over to becoming a nutrition coach.
I love that. And I definitely want to get into that whole journey a little bit later. I always start off with every guest who comes on to talk about childhood and adolescent life. Since our conversation is really going to focus around body image and mental health and all of that, I would love for you to share bits and pieces of what your childhood was like, as well as if you struggled with your weight as a kid. How was your family dynamic growing up around diet, nutrition, relationships with food, things like that?
I would say I had a negative relationship with food as a child. I had probably been on a diet since I was 10 years old. I know I for sure went to a nutritionist at least at age 10. So I have had a long background with being on and off diets. And I think growing up in the 80s, a lot of us had both parents that worked. So had a lot of time to yourself after school. At that point, snacking was a problem for me as a child. Like looking back at that, like a lot of that was probably like emotional comfort eating. But I think also like in the 80s, so much information about health and dieting that was delivered to our parents' generation, very different from how it is today. And even with like the most well informed parents and the most helpful parents, I think everything was a little bit misguided because the 80s. So, like, nobody's body image was looking great back then for sure. So I think like a lot of that impacted the way that I thought about my body, sort of like screwed up my relationship with food.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that a lot. I was never like the chunky kid growing up, but my own image of how I saw myself, I thought I was fat. It's so crazy to see like the images of me back like around middle school or high school, being who I am today, like looking at that, it's like, oh my God, what the fuck was I thinking? I was perfectly fine, but body dysmorphia is a real thing. And I definitely have struggled with that for pretty much my entire life since I can remember. I don't ever remember being like bullied as a kid growing up in regards to my weight. I definitely was bullied in other instances, but never was like, oh, she's the fat kid. So we're going to make fun of her. You know what I mean?
I think like I definitely had, well, I was always like one of the biggest kids in my class. So I definitely was like picked on in school. But I think this also like kind of shaped my whole development and growth of my personality growing up also is that I became the overachiever and the talented person. So I got really into music and I was like, if I'm really good at all of these things, if I'm really good at school, you can't talk shit about me because
Yeah.
I'm going to be famous and you're not.
Right. Exactly. So fuck you, Brad.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. So now let's talk about transitioning into adulthood prior to you making that decision of having weight loss surgery. What was it like for you as an adult? And was there like an aha moment for you that you were like, I need to have this done because I can't fucking take this anymore? Like for me, I actually wanted to have my surgery 5 years ago and I had everything scheduled, ready to go. And then I ended up losing my job, lost my insurance, and then I was like, okay, maybe this is like God telling me it's not meant to be, whatever. And then after going everything that I've went through in regards to that abusive relationship that I was in 2021 and healing from that and just continuing to pack on the pounds, even though I was doing a lot of work on this, but still my physical was not matching up with my mental. And I got to the point that I just couldn't take it anymore because I was in physical pain every single day. Like I had knee problems, my lower back, my feet were swelling up, I was pre-diabetic, like all of these things were coming. And I was like, I have to do something drastic. I'm down 63 pounds and counting. I'm very excited about that. But I would love to know for you, what was that like?
Before I decided to have weight loss surgery, I've been heavy my entire life. I definitely have gone through periods where I've lost a substantial amount of weight, gained it back multiple times. And I was definitely like, as part of, I mean, part of the process when you have weight loss surgery is that you have to kind of like prove
Yes.
to your medical team that, oh, yeah, I've tried to lose weight a bunch of times. Look at these pictures. Here's my before and after, like literally 7 times of losing and regaining like between 50 and 100 pounds multiple times. I mean, I haven't gone and done that math, but I mean, if I've totaled up all the amount of weight that I've lost over the years, it would be a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely more than I ring in at. So that's fun. Always through undergrad and graduate school, I've always been like an overachiever type of personality. And I think a lot of that grew out of my childhood, as I was talking about before. But in graduate school in particular, I think part of that grew out of me also neglecting my health. It became a way that I'm just going to like laser focus on my work. I'm going to do all this writing, get published, go to conferences, do all of these things, and not be functioning well in my own body. And I had, at that time, I definitely was pre diabetic, had PCOS in a bad way, literally the worst periods. And I just like, I was isolating myself socially also, even though, like, as part of what I was doing for a living is like teaching and engaging socially. When I wasn't teaching and when I wasn't presenting, I was home and working. And that was all I was doing, like a kind of like a machine. And it just like was not healthy in terms of like what my day-to-day life looked like. It was like a lot of coffee, definitely a lot of pizza, and a lot of wine in the evening. And then it was just like rinse and repeat. And I was not active at that time. And I would go through spurts where I would go to the gym and do that. But I think, like, really at the crux of it, I had really isolated myself socially. And I just felt very unhappy in my body and also just like socially unhappy.
Very lonely.
Yeah. So after I had finished graduate school, I had started teaching music as a voice and piano instructor. And that was like, I had started a business, and that studio was my main gig. And that also led me to socially become more introverted. And I was just like, wow, I feel like I'm making my life smaller and smaller instead of what I should be doing. Right before my 39th birthday, I got sick and I had a sinus infection, which not a big deal. But I went to the doctor and I was just displeased with not just my weight, but my health in general. And I was like, people had talked to me about doing the bariatric surgery before. And I'm like, I'm going to change all this shit. I'm going to do 0 to hero. I'm going to change everything because I don't want to be 60 years old and feeling like this. I want to feel like the best version of myself when I get older. I want to be able to like be active and do fun stuff. And like right now, I felt like at that point in time, I wasn't doing fun things. So right before my 39th birthday, I was like, well, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be healthy by the time I turn 40. So that was my goal for myself. And like whatever conception of health I had, which is a very different one than what I have now.
So you had the surgery when?
2016.
And how has it been for you since?
I lost a substantial amount of weight, like I think 150 pounds. And over time, it's come back. I'm not like, definitely not fully back where I was, but I have regained a lot of weight. But I have also maintained consistent exercise and movement. I'm an endurance athlete now, which I wasn't when I started. So, like, that portion of my life is completely different. And even though my body is bigger than it was when I was at my smallest, let's say, I feel much healthier mentally and physically than I did before. And that is like the biggest benefit that I've received from the surgery.
I mean, that's the perfect segue to the next part that I want to talk about. I mentioned it in the beginning was the mental toll that it's been having weight loss surgery. And like I said before, I really don't think that the doctors prepare you enough for what to expect mentally. They definitely prep you for like physically, how your body prior and then during and then post-op, but I did not realize how much of an emotional roller coaster I was going to be on after having this surgery. So, I would love for you to talk about what your experience was in regards to the mental health aspect of it. Let's start off with your own experience, and then what would be advice that you would give to someone who was like us, who's considering having weight loss surgery, but they're not ready to like pull the plug? What do you feel like they really need to focus on when it comes to the mental health aspect?
That is like the key of this whole process is the mental process, because you can do anything physical. You can get into that mindset and do anything physical. The mental shit, that's where the party comes in.
That's where
That's
the
where you
real
got to
work is
do.
at.
That
Yes.
is where you have to do all the work. Exact. So, my experience was I had my surgery at a center for bariatric excellence. So I like really did my research when I decided to have my surgery because I had waited a long time to have it. And I was like, this place is awesome. They take all of the different aspects of it's not just the physical component. There is like a mental health piece involved with the treatment plan. And when you go and check in with your doctor, there's like a nutrition check, your physical check, and also like talking about your mental health. And I was like, that's great because I feel like that's going to be the biggest struggle for me because I know myself.
Yeah.
And also because I know myself, I was like, I feel like I'm going to go through a lot of changes during this process. And I want to have myself set up to be prepared to deal with those changes mentally because I'm like, it's going to be challenging. And I had most people who go through this process, there is like a support group component through your surgery center. So you may get to know some people who have had surgery previously and kind of like get to experience their story and their level of success or not success with the surgery. I saw that a lot of people really struggled with the mental component. And I was like, well, if I get a therapist, then I'm going to be gold through this process. So that was my strategy. Did it work? I mean, I still struggled. And a couple months into my process, this was actually like before I had my surgery, my best friend passed away like a few months prior to me having my surgery. And that was challenging to get over without all of the weight loss and looking at yourself and like, oh, I look like a completely different person and I don't know what I look like and all of this other. And then having to field other people's comments and reactions to your body, like all of this stuff. Having that therapist was necessary, but I don't know, maybe I should have had two. Like, I just feel like the support component to the surgery, you need to give yourself as many layers of support as possible. I thought I gave myself enough support, but looking back, I would maybe like add to that team because really as like the most challenging part is dealing with your brain throughout the
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah, and just changing your whole mindset and your whole relationship around food. That's why I felt like I needed to do something this drastic, like have part of my stomach cut out, because I wanted to change my relationship with food. We talked about it a little bit earlier, emotional eating. I'm definitely 100% an emotional eater. I eat when I'm bored, I eat when I'm sad, I eat when I'm angry. But in order for me to change that relationship and not use it as like a coping mechanism, I had to find other tools and modalities to take that place, which is why now I'm an avid gym goer. I go at least 4 times a week, moving my body. I used to be a heavy smoker too, cigarette smoker. I don't do that anymore either. Like, I just really wanted to change a lot of these things about me because coping mechanisms that I had were very unhealthy, but I didn't realize how much it had to do with my mental as opposed to my physical.
And even with changing all the habits prior to my surgery, I'm a very like all or nothing type of or I used to be an all or nothing type of person. I've changed this a bit over time. But like prior to me having surgery, I decided I was like, oh, well, in order for me to have this, I'm going all in. So I'm going to go vegan. I'm cutting out sugar. I'm cutting out alcohol. I'm cutting out coffee. I like there was plants on the table. Like there was plants, there was protein shakes, and there was the gym and running. That was my life. You can muscle your way through that for a long time, but like, is that shit sustainable in the long term? It is not. Like, your brain is powerful, but if you throw in like a death of your best friend on top of that, good luck. Because you're going to need some more skills in your toolbox. And that's the piece. So it's like building up your team. So, like, my advice to like anyone who's going to go through this process is build up whatever support you need. Make sure that you have all of your healthy habits dialed in, but it's not just relying on your healthy habits. If you're an emotional eater and you haven't dealt with emotional eating is normal. It's something that everybody does. You have a stressful day, you might want a cookie, but it's when it becomes maladaptive and starts messing up other things in your life where it's maybe not the most helpful way of dealing with things. So it's like if you know that about yourself and you can't get to whatever the problem is before doing the surgery, all of those habits that you have always had for like 30, 40 years, they're going to come back. This surgery is a tool and you can't fix a non-food problem with food. Can't do it.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that it's a tool because I think a lot of people in society think that we're taking the easy way out. Like, oh, of course you had weight loss surgery. It's going to be easier for you. Fuck you to anyone who has
Yeah.
that narrative because it's the complete opposite. It is a tool, but it is up to you to use that tool to reach your goals. And I think I would piggyback on learning patience, which is not a strong suit of mine. Definitely felt like, oh, I'm going to have the surgery and the pounds are just going to melt off. And yes, that happened like the first 2 weeks, but then shit started slowing down. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I thought this was not a part of the process. I thought I was going to lose like 100 pounds in a month. And that's not reality, right? So also just know that like we said, it is a tool. It's up to you to reach your goals and just know that it's not going to happen overnight. Like, this is a slow and steady process and you shouldn't want it to happen so quickly because that's how the shit can just come right back and then some. You know what I mean? Like, practice using that mindset of like slow and steady wins the race and it's going to happen with the work that I'm putting into it. And as long as you're doing something every single day as opposed to nothing, then you're winning already.
Yeah. And I think, like, really the other piece of this is to investigate for yourself. Like, if you're going through the process, really do some time and figure out what your relationship with your weight is, what your relationship with your body is. Because if you are hyper focused on the number on the scale being your worth and your value, you're fucked. Because at some
100%.
point, the scale's going to stop moving. And then you're going to look at yourself and you're going to be like, well, shit, now I have all this loose skin. And that's going to be a problem for you. And at some point, all that positive reinforcement that you're getting from everyone, like, oh, look at you now, or look how pretty you are now. Like, you didn't have the same face before. Right?
Mhm.
But like you get all that positive reinforcement. And then as soon as like you kind of like settle into wherever you are, that noise stops. And then you're still focused on like, oh, well, I have a roll over here that I didn't used to have because used to have fat in it. So got to fix that.
Absolutely. It always comes back to the mental no matter what, and that's why I love having this conversation because, like I said, they don't talk enough about this when it comes to weight loss surgery and healthy lifestyle in general. So, I would love for you to now talk about why you decided to become a certified nutrition coach and your business, Be Better with Bethany. I love the title. Talk about what's your purpose behind it and what that journey looked like for you to make it happen.
Yeah. So I think why I decided to even get into nutrition coaching, it was really just for my own self education. Having been to nutritionists since I was a kid, I'm like, I feel like I understand how to eat. People keep telling me what to put in my mouth. I'm like, I feel like I know this piece, but let me do my work here and like find out everything I can find out. Maybe I'm missing something. Well, guess what? I wasn't really missing anything when it came to like what to eat. That check. I knew that. And I think with most people who have had any sort of struggles with weight throughout their life, you know what to eat. That's not the problem. The problem is what you're doing with the food.
Mhm.
So for me, it was like stress eating. And I knew that was a problem. So I was like going through this certification. I was like, maybe I can start to figure out why I'm stress eating, why I choose, even though I have all the knowledge to do this thing, because like I have the understanding logically. You can have all of the understanding and the knowledge. That's a feeling problem. You're eating out of emotion.
Right.
So it's really like getting into that. So like that required some extra work on my part, which I did with a therapist and some more support team. That kind of got that ball rolling. But as I was going through that process, I was like, oh, there's a lot of other people like me in this world who struggle with their relationship with food, struggle with their emotions and eating all the time, and who have done a lot of work to make changes. And it's for whatever reason, the mental piece, it's not sticking. So maybe I could be the person that I needed when I was stuck in diet culture and help others. So that was kind of when I started coaching, my mindset behind that. So my coaching practice, I help women who move, ditch diets, change their relationships with food, get strong, increase their self-confidence, and slay their goals. Because I work with a lot of endurance athletes, but I also work with women who aren't athletes, but who are just looking to like start developing healthy behaviors and get out of the diet hamster wheel.
I love that so much, and that's what I love about coaches. Like, I think that's so beautiful that you're able to help the old Bethany and just to have more women in these spaces. I love that for you so much. So, if y'all are looking for a coach, I'm going to leave her info in the show notes. All right, so now I want to talk about diet culture. So, for anyone who's hearing that term for the first time, I'd love for you to talk about what that means and why is it so toxic for our mental health.
Diet culture is kind of like a collective set of social expectations that are telling us that there's a one way to be, one way to look, and one way to eat, and that we're a better person. We're more worthy if our bodies look and sort of conform to a specific aesthetic, which is typically thin and fit. Any magazine or social media will show us this, right? There's all these other rules around it too, right? You can't be too thin, too fit, not too muscular, not too strong, but not too soft and not too fat either, right? It's like Goldilocks has to be just right. Why is that toxic? Because when we believe our bodies are source of worth and value, that is damaging. Our worth and value as humans has zero to do with our outward appearance. And how does that show up in the world? So diets, supplements, cleanses, social media influencers, like a Shape magazine type of thing that's like, here's a 30-day squat challenge so you can get your thigh gap, right? That
Yes,
kind of,
which is bullshit.
yeah, exactly.
I definitely fell victim to those diet teas before I did my weight loss surgery. It was a few years ago. Oh my God. Never the fuck again because all it did was give me diarrhea. Like I was literally glued to the toilet because I was just shitting my brains out.
I literally did so many different diets throughout
Yeah.
my life and supplements and
The green teas and the fat
yeah,
burning, and
the
that's all
one with
bullshit.
Anna Nicole Smith, Trim Spot, like so much bullshit. Yeah, and it
Yes.
all it did was like make you feel cracked out and starving and ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like $1 billion marketing when it comes to like the whole diet culture and fitness. Like,
It's like 72 billion.
you see, it's fucking ridiculous, y'all.
Ridiculous.
Like,
Yeah.
you got to just do the basics drink water, move your body, and eat in moderation. Like, that's it. It's so fucking cliche, but I've realized that, like, I don't need to do like the fat burning teas and the green tea diet pills and the powders and the fucking waist trainers and all this bullshit. Just fucking move your body, drink some water, and don't eat fast food every fucking day. That's it. So I would love to hear your thoughts around something that's very on trend nowadays. It's called the body positivity movement, and it's definitely split down the middle in regards to how society feels about it. What are your thoughts around the body positivity movement?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a split in terms of people who think it's like either pro being body positive or if you're losing weight in any sort of way, then you're not body positive. But I
Right.
don't think it's that. I think it is having positive regard for your body. That's body positivity, right?
Right.
And I think that is awesome, right? But I also think for most women, it's very unrealistic to just expect that, like, if I have a negative relationship with my body and negative emotions about my body today, that I'm going to look in the mirror in 5 minutes and be like, ooh, girl, I'm looking hot today and like
Exactly.
everything is on point. That's bullshit, right? When I discuss this in my coaching, when I talk about body image and things like this, it's more of like, I think of it as like a ladder or a pathway that you can take to get to body positivity. So if you kind of start off like an awareness phase, I'm aware that I have thoughts and feelings about my body, whether or not they're positive or negative. And especially like if you're just kind of like starting off on this journey, you're probably having more negative thoughts than positive thoughts, right? So moving from there to having neutral thoughts about your body. So you can look at maybe you don't like the way your stomach looks in a bathing suit or something. You can look at that and be like, well, that is a human stomach. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and this is what my stomach looks like. Boom, neutral. And then being accepting of that. So this is my stomach and this is what it looks like. Cool. I'm wearing a swimsuit today. And then you can be like, I like my legs because I was able to run a half marathon with these legs. I was able to cycle 75 miles with these legs. These legs are doing good shit for me. So more of that appreciation and then moving into like gratitude and positivity from there and being thankful for what your body does for you. It's a process and it's not something that you can just hop on Instagram and see someone chubby in a swimsuit living her best life, which is awesome. Please show yourself in a swimsuit because there's not enough people in different bodies like showing themselves. Like, I love that. I want to see that. But be realistic too. Everyone's in a different place.
Absolutely. I love the breaking it down in the latter aspect and just taking it one step at a time instead of having to go 0 to 100, like the extreme. Like you said, that's definitely not realistic. So I love that approach so much. Thank you for sharing that. So let me ask you, what have you learned about yourself and the type of woman that you are since being on this whole personal development journey? What's one thing you've learned about Bethany?
I've done a lot of work to like heal different aspects of myself. So I definitely feel like I'm a much more whole person than I used to be. And I'm much more self compassionate now than I ever was before because I forever have been very hard on myself in a detrimental way and in a damaging way. So the fact that like now if I have a meal that isn't like moving me towards my goals, let's say, maybe I decide to have like spaghetti and meatballs with my family. I did this yesterday.
Yeah.
Old Bethany would be like, oh shit, we are off plan. Everything is in the trash. We have to like rewash and start again from zero. I'm like, I'm enjoying a meal with my family now. I'm going to have dinner later tonight and it's going to be like what I would normally eat for dinner tonight. So, like, it's fine to have a balanced life and like not hate myself for it.
I think changing the vocabulary that we have with ourselves can be so beneficial in your own healing journey. I too can be my biggest critic, my biggest hater. As I've been on this journey, I realized like if I expect other people to treat me with love and respect and care, I have to give that to myself first. So it's a lot of work, y'all. I'm telling you, it's more than just the physical shit. It's a lot of mental shit that you got to work through. So, what does self care look like for you?
Yeah. So self care is saying yes to myself all the time. So, like, it's not exciting. And it's often doing shit that I don't want to do. But if it's stuff that makes me feel good and function my best, yes, please, more of that. Because I don't want to feel like shit anymore. End of story. So, like, what do I do to take care of myself? I drink water all the time. Hydration is key, right? Sleep is huge. Oh my
Huge.
gosh. And
I don't
like,
think people realize how much you need fucking sleep, like good sleep.
you need good sleep and you need more sleep than you think you need because
Yes.
I don't know, grad school zombie life, I would like function on like 4 hours of sleep. And even when I was working my admin job and coaching part time, so I was working like a ton, I would sleep like 5 hours a night. But I was also endurance training. Like your body can't do shit when
You'll reach
it's time.
burnout
I
real
mean,
quick.
your body can do things. You can push your body to do things. Is it gonna feel great? Probably not. You're gonna be tired and
Yep.
just like not having that level of energy, right? So, like, getting enough sleep is key. And as soon as I was able to make that shift when I started coaching full time and left my old job, that was one of the first things that I started working on. And oh my gosh, I felt so much more energy, so much more productive. I wanted to exercise every day, like, it wasn't a struggle. So, like, getting some kind of movement is also something that I like to do every day, whether that is like some kind of like stretching and mobility or riding my bike. Cause I'm working on towards a goal of a century ride on my indoor bike. So towards 100 miles. So this has been like multiple months of training, but we're working towards it. So almost there, a couple more months to go. And just making sure that I do my meal prep and I'm eating healthful meals every day, balanced meals timed out throughout the day. If I do those things every day, I'm gold.
Love that so much. So, you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast. So, tell me your definition of thriving.
Well, I think we're thriving as people when we're kind of like in alignment and trusting ourselves to make decisions about showing up and taking action towards what we want in life. Whether that's moving outside of our comfort zones and doing stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, because like people might be like, oh, doing things that are uncomfortable is not thriving.
Okay.
But actually, like living in that zone where you're pushing it a little bit, right?
Hmm.
That's going to bring you closer to your future self. So, like, the more you start to like live in that area of a little bit of discomfort, helps you move towards your goals more. And it's also about like trusting yourself and making choices and decisions to support your goals and moving in that direction instead of like shitting all over yourself and what other people want you to do.
I can totally agree. When I took myself out of my comfort zone and did the shit that made my palms sweat and my heart race, afterwards it's like, oh, it really wasn't that bad. It was all this fucking thing that like likes to talk us out of doing the shit that's going to make us elevate and grow. And I think we need to, like you said, push ourselves just a little bit, not to the point that like it's so overwhelming that you don't even want to do it, but try something new, try something different, and maybe you'll like it and maybe you won't, and that's okay.
Yeah, like I tried aerial yoga one time and I could not get inverted. Like I was freaking myself out and I was like, maybe this is something I would try again. But like right now I'm okay with like I did that thing and it was uncomfortable.
Exactly. At least you tried it, right?
Yeah, but it's also like doing those things that like push you out of your comfort zone also shouldn't feel like a grind. So like for me, like I used to run a lot and like training for half marathons and things like that. And when that starts to feel like something you should be doing because it's on
Mhm.
your training plan and you can't, you're like rigid and you're stuck in that mindset of like, oh, I have to do this today. Is that really like moving you forward?
Absolutely. Giving yourself the permission to pivot is definitely something that we all need to practice. Okay, so if you could go back to your younger self, whatever age pops up for you, being the woman that you are today, what is one piece of advice you would tell her?
Don't be afraid to be a badass. Be bold and do the things you want to do and be out there and give zero fucks about other people's opinions. Because I think I spent so much time, not in my teenage years necessarily, but like throughout my life, worried about what other people thought. At the end of the day, people have too much shit going on to think about you really anyway. And if they are, who cares?
That is so true. Like, at the end of the day, us humans, we're so fucking selfish and we care about ourselves more than we care about other people. So fuck their opinions because 9 times out of 10, they're not even worried about you. And if they are, fuck them. I love that. Okay, final question before you plug in how we can work with you. In the far future, when you're no longer on this living earth, someone needs to sit down and write about Bethany. What do you want them to say about you?
That I gave zero fucks. And that I just like I made my own path. And I think like it took me a long time to kind of figure out what that path was for me, but that's okay too.
Yes. Absolutely. I love that. I mean, I couldn't think of a perfect way to end the episode. I would love for you to plug in how people can work with you, how we can follow you on social media, because I know they're going to love to know more about you after this conversation. So let us know.
Sure. You can find me on social on Facebook and Instagram at BBE Better with Bethany. And also at bebetterwithbethany.com is my website where you can find all my coaching information. And if you're new to working with me, I have a free 5-day video series called Spark. And it's how you can get started to build some healthy habits and start taking action toward your health goals. So that's like the best place where you can start working with me for free and kind of like get to see what it's like working with me as a coach. Those are some ways that you can get working with me.
I love that. Definitely going to leave all your info in the show notes, Bethany. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It just makes me feel so much better that I'm not the only one who's had these thoughts and feelings. We are not alone in this journey, and I'm so excited to continue watching you grow and develop and hit your goals. And I just appreciate you for coming on and sharing your truth with my audience.
Thanks so much. It's been great to be here and thank you for sharing your platform.
Thank you.